Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and explore the incredibly diverse, highly complex internal security challenges facing the world's most populous democracy. Now, when we talk about India's security, it's super easy to oversimplify things. But to truly grasp the dynamics at play here, we have to look closely at the facts on the ground. And that is exactly what we're going to do today. We're letting the data and the historical record guide us. So let's start by totally shattering the myth that terrorism in India is just one single unified threat. If you only catch passing global headlines, you might assume it's all driven by one specific cause, or maybe confined to just one border. But actually, scratch that. The reality is far more intricate. It's deeply rooted in the country's diverse social structure, its historical conflicts, and its absolutely vast geography.
The motivations here vary drastically across the country. The threat matrix is, honestly, completely fractured. You've got separatist movements demanding autonomy, groups driven purely by religious ideology, left-wing extremism fighting for a massive socio-economic overhaul, and localized communal conflicts. I mean, the drivers range all the way from land rights for the absolute poorest citizens to ethnic autonomy for geographically isolated communities. What does this mean? It means there is absolutely no one-size-fits-all solution for the state.
To make sense of the whole shebang, we'll take a geographical case study approach today. 1. Defining the threat. 2. Kashmir and cross-border terrorism. 3. Northeast ethnic struggles. 4. Naxalite insurgency. And 5. The path forward.
Section 1. Defining the threat and its impact on India.
Before we tour the regions, we need to understand the immense scale we're talking about here. Throughout the 2000s, we saw a relentless targeting of democracy, peace processes, and everyday civilians. Just look at the timeline. You have the 2001 parliament attack, an aggressive, direct strike at the very heart of the political system. Then, the 2007 Samjhauta Express bombing, which was specifically designed to derail the peace process between India and Pakistan. And, of course, the truly devastating 2008 Mumbai attacks, targeting public spaces, hotels, and stations. These aren't just dates in a history book. They represent massive psychological impacts that forced India to completely reinvent its anti-terror strategies.
Section 2. Kashmir and cross-border terrorism. A decades-long conflict.
Moving up to the mountainous borders of the north, we find our first distinct theater of conflict. Now, unlike internal uprisings, this is cross-border terrorism. It's deeply intrinsically linked to international boundaries and external support networks. Take Lashkar-e-Taiba, or LET. This is a Pakistan-based extremist group using highly violent tactics to challenge Indian authority, with their ultimate goal being the liberation of Kashmir. It's a situation where extremely difficult geography and incredibly tense international relations just collide head-on.
So how exactly do they operate? Well, because of that rugged, mountainous terrain, they rely heavily on cross-border infiltration. Once inside, they execute high-profile, highly coordinated attacks to maximize fear and chaos. To sustain their numbers, they use religious propaganda to radicalize local youth, and they build underground sleeper cell recruitment networks. These are the various specific strategies LAT uses to disrupt normal life, including their direct role in the devastating Mumbai and Parliament attacks we just talked about.
Let's completely shift gears now. Section 3. Northeast ethnic struggles, focusing on ethnic diversity.
Transitioning across the country to the geographically isolated Northeast, the motives shift entirely. Notice the sharp contrast here. These groups are not driven by religious ideology. Instead, we're looking at organizations like the United Liberation Front of Assam, or ULFA, demanding sovereignty in Assam, and the National Socialist Council of Nagaland, or NSCN, demanding a totally separate homeland for the Naga people. These movements are fueled by deep-seated ethnic divisions and fierce territorial demands rooted in protecting unique cultural identities from outsiders.
You might be wondering, what's really fueling this? Well, the core grievances here stem from a historical feeling of political alienation from the central government. The Northeast features a massive number of distinct ethnic communities, which naturally leads to intense resource competition. Combine that with a long-standing sense of neglect, profound underdevelopment and poverty, and extreme geographical isolation, you've got a potent recipe for severe dissatisfaction, especially among young people who become prime targets for extremist recruitment. And the tragic result on the ground? Extremists utilize guerrilla warfare from within remote forests, and they rely on extortion and kidnappings to exert control over local populations and line their own pockets. Just imagine trying to run a small business or simply send your kids to school in that kind of environment. The socioeconomic damage is staggering.
It disrupts trade, halts education, completely prevents tourism, and leaves long-term psychological trauma on the communities caught in the middle.
Section 4. The Naxalite Insurgency, a Marxist-Leninist uprising.
Moving deep into the dense forests of central India, we find a very different kind of conflict. Naxalism is a Marxist-Leninist insurgency. It actually stems all the way back to a 1967 peasant revolt in the village of Naxalbari in West Bengal against local landlords. Unlike the ethnic or religious conflicts we've covered so far, this is fundamentally driven by raw issues of landlessness, absolute poverty, and social injustice. Their ideology openly, actively advocates for an armed struggle against the state to establish a classless society. Because of the remarkably poor infrastructure in these remote tribal areas, Naxalites have been able to establish tight control and really exploit local resentment. This vast area is often referred to as the Red Corridor, spanning states like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, and Bihar. The incredibly difficult, dense terrain severely limits any effective government presence, allowing these groups to just step right in and fill that power vacuum.
What you get on the ground is a constant, deadly tug of war. On one side, state actions. The government pushes massive mining and industrial projects, deploys heavy security forces, and attempts to expand basic governance. On the other side, Naxalite countermeasures. They violently sabotage that new infrastructure, launch deadly ambushes using IEDs, and even set up parallel people's courts and their own taxation systems. They violently oppose corporate development, claiming it exploits marginalized tribal communities without fair compensation. It's a vicious, ongoing cycle.
Which brings us to our final stop, Section 5, the path forward, India's response.
Pulling back to the macro view, how does the Indian government actually respond to such incredibly varied threats? It builds into a multi-pronged approach, trying to balance sheer force with essential infrastructure and political negotiation. Step 1 is hardcore security operations and intelligence, using specialized agencies like the NIA and NSG to dismantle networks. But force just isn't enough, right? So Step 2 focuses heavily on socioeconomic development, building the roads, schools, and hospitals needed to remove the crushing poverty that fuels recruitment. Finally, Step 3 relies on peace talks and rehabilitation programs to negotiate ceasefires and offer a genuine path back to normal life for surrendered militants.
But of course, despite strong, coordinated measures, persistent challenges remain that allow extremist groups to survive and rapidly adapt. First, porous international boundaries make stopping the flow of arms and funding nearly impossible. Second, rapid technological adaptation. The use of social media for recruitment and encrypted apps for communication allows these groups to completely bypass traditional borders. And finally, the sheer complexity of coordinating political and state responses across such a massive, diverse nation often slows down how quickly they can react. I want to leave you with this exact thought directly from the source material regarding the Naxalite conflict, though honestly, it applies perfectly to the entire landscape we've explored today. A balanced strategy combining security and development is necessary to defeat Naxalism. It forces us to ask a profound question. Can lasting peace ever truly be achieved through military and police force alone, or is inclusive, equitable economic development the ultimate true weapon against extremism? Thank you so much for exploring this complex explainer with me today. See you next time.